All right. Good morning and welcome to another interview episode of Swing and a Miss. And today we are very honored to have with us Twins broadcaster Cory Provus. How are you doing today, Cory?
I am fine, guys. Thanks for having me on your show.
Absolutely. Really appreciative of the time that you're giving us today. I know you're on the road, so making time for us is definitely something we appreciate. We also have Tyler, who is out at a baseball tournament today. So if you're catching a little bit of that audio in the background, that's what that is. Um, but as the resident Twins fan, I'm actually going to kick it over to Tyler and let him start this interview.
Yeah. Cory, thanks for being on the show. I really appreciate it. You have had a long and storied broadcasting career, and you have either taken the mantle from or worked alongside a lot of stellar broadcasters. So, growing up, I always had the voice of John Gordon, radio broadcaster, going on in the background. And then, it's been Dick Bremer on TV up until you took over for him. And then, you also potentially had, one of, I don't know what you'd say, like the top three most famous baseball broadcasters of all time, and Bob Uecker as a coworker. What is something that those broadcasters did that you either learned from them or you have integrated into how you produce and show a ball game?
Tyler, great question. And thanks again for having me on the show, fellas. And I was very lucky in my first major league job was with the Cubs and WGN Radio in 2007. And I had a chance to work, and I listened to these guys. I'm from the Chicagoland area, and I grew up a big Cub fan. So I listened to Cubs games on the radio from the time I was, five. I loved the medium, and I loved Cubs games. And then as I got older, my ear kind of listened in a different manner, whereas I wasn't as concerned about the score. But when I kind of figured that this is what I wanted to do for a living, I was more listening for the how and the content and the voice and the inflection and the storytelling and the laughter. And Pat Hughes and the late great Ron Santo, they had this thing, and it was literally called the Pat and Ron Show. And it was the Pat and Ron Show, and there happened to be a Cubs game going on in the background because they called the game, they had fun, but it came across as members of your family, and you're listening for your favorite team. You want them to succeed, but man, these guys are having fun. And then when I had a chance to work with them in 2007, I had the front row seat for the best show in town because these two guys just had so much fun every single day. They weren't stiff and so serious about it. It's not the NFL that there's one game a week and you live and die, and college football the same way with your team. And then if you lose, you're sad for 6-7 days. If you have a bye week, it's 2 weeks. If you lose a baseball game, so what? You move on. You play again the next day. But these two guys were just champions of laughing at themselves and never taking themselves too seriously. So that made a big impact on me and the style that I wanted to have if I ever had the chance to be in that chair. So I went from that, and then I went to Milwaukee. And speaking of guys that were always fun to be with and laugh at yourself and do everything with a strong sense of levity, it was Bob Uecker. I mean, because he made fun of his own career every day. I mean, every day he'd make fun of his own career, and not to mention his own style, his own personality. And so without those people, the way I call a game, the way that I worked with Dan Gladden for 12 years, and now on TV with a handful of great partners, my style is a byproduct of the people that I worked with and places that I was lucky enough to work previously. Because without them, it's probably a straight, probably boring broadcast that I probably wouldn't be hired at other places, because that's not what people want. They want to be entertained. You want to be educated. You want to be informed and all that. And you never put the game second. The game is always the thing. But if you don't do it with some fun and some laughter and just, again, some, at times, even some self, deprecating sides of humor, you're not going to survive. You're going to drown in it because you do it every single day. You're going to get lost in the minutia of how broadcasting works and how the baseball schedule works. So without those guys, this doesn't happen for me. I don't think at all, in Twins territory going back to 2012.
Do you have a euchre story that you could share with us that you're willing to?
Sure. I mean, I've got a lot of them. I mean, many I can't, but the one that I don't tell too often, which I think is really funny, and because there was a connection to the Twins that I brought, later on in life. So, Bob was the ultimate pitch man. I mean, and you saw it with the commercials and the Tonight Show and everything he did. He just was the ultimate pitch man. And so one of his sponsorships that he had was Usinger's sausage, and I'll never forget it. Usinger's sausage. It's just not summer without him. And those are different than the racing sausages, at Brewers games, because that was a separate sponsor. And so, but Uke was a pitchman for Usinger's, so much so he had his own brat. That if you went to a local grocery store and you bought the Mr. Baseball brat, all the proceeds benefited the Make-A-Wish Foundation of Wisconsin. And so Bob would do these daily reads for Usinger's. And so he's doing it just a normal day. And he's like, Milwaukee Brewers baseball is brought to you by Usinger's. Usinger's, it's just not summer without him. Core, what's great about Usinger's? So what's that, Yuke? He's like, you don't even need a grill to cook them. I said, no. He's like, no. If you're on your way to Miller Park and you're stuck in traffic, just pop open the cigarette lighter, pop it in, take a bite, and you're good. You have some crisp kraut and some mustard and your car seat. Yeah, dip it in and take a bite. But just pop that thing right in your cigarette lighter and you'll be great. So we're having a great back and forth about this. Just a random moment. All right. And so a month goes by. We get a letter. And so Bob's secretary, her name was is Mary Burns, and Mary was the secretary for Uke and also Bud Selig. So talk about a woman that has stories and could write a great book one day. So she would always bring in Bob's mail, and we got a letter one day, and Uke's opening it up in the booth, and we had a massive booth in Milwaukee, just a huge booth for entertaining and what have you. And sure enough, this fan wrote in and said, "Hey, dear Bob, I was listening to the broadcast, recently, and you talked about it was okay to put a Usinger sausage in your cigarette lighter. Well, I did that, and now my car's in the shop. If I send you the bill, the invoice, will you pay for it?" So sure enough, you read that on the air, and then we just had the absolute best time with that letter and that moment, and the things you could get away with and have some fun with, because years later, so I'm doing Twins games and I'm bored out of my mind, a bad season. And so Dan Gladden, he has a farm in St. Bonifacius, which is west of the metro. So Euchre would often start his broadcast, the first fastball, here's Gallardo, and the opening pitch is right down Wisconsin Avenue, strike one, and we're underway in Milwaukee. It might have been during COVID when we weren't traveling. I don't remember the exact time, but I started saying, here's Barrios, and the opening pitch is right down St. Bonnie Boulevard. There is no St. Bonnie Boulevard. Okay, so 2 years go by. My boss pulls me in. I've been doing this for a couple of years now, and my boss pulls me in and says, "We got a letter from the St. Bonifacius Chamber of Commerce, and they keep hearing you talk about St. Bonnie Boulevard." And they're like, "Did they miss something?" I'm like, "This is fantastic." So I called Uke right away. I said, "This goes back to the Usinger's brought. You had some fun with it, and now I got this one, and now I got the Chamber of Commerce thinking that I made up a road." So he loved that one. So that's a good one. It was a long story. Sorry about that. Probably went on too long there, but it was just those kind of moments where, going back to my first point about you better have some fun doing this. And again, there was nobody that had more fun than Mr. Baseball.
I would be remiss if I didn't ask the follow-up question. Did he pay for the car repair?
He did not.
Okay.
He did not. Nor did we got a big hang with him for that, bud. So just sorry, you got a good story out of it. We didn't
That's
say
a-
his
that's a-
name. We
that's
didn't
a
like
great
say
story.
the name on the air. We're not going to bury the guy, but we did not pay for it. No.
Gotcha. That's a really interesting story, and I think one of the things, and we've talked about this, just hanging out. The people that we've had on this show to do these interviews with, what we're finding out is that this is really what the game is. It is about storytelling, and so I guess my question kind of tied into that would be, how do you incorporate or balance that ideology of being a storyteller, because the game lends itself to that, both in TV and radio, with calling the action? Where do you find that balance, or how do you find that balance?
It's a lot harder now because of the pitch clock. There's less times, and I'm a big proponent of the pitch clock. I think it's done wonders for the game, but there's less time for that. And
Yeah.
I think in TV, it's easier to do that because it's a visual medium. If I'm in the middle of a story about a player and it's a routine ground ball to short, I don't need to call it that it's a routine ground ball to short because you can see it. Radio's tough. Radio, you have to call the game. I mean, Ernie Harwell had that great line that what he loved about baseball and the medium of radio is that nothing happens until the announcer says so. And it's so true. It sounds obvious, but it makes a lot of sense. When you're broadcasting a game on radio, it's really hard to weave those in because you still have to call the game. So TV, you have more time to do so, but it's also getting harder and harder because players are guarded. They really are. And everybody wants more stories. I think the bulk of the audience, they would rather hear more stories than stats. And I get it. But trying to get a story out of a guy, what are you working on? I'm not going to tell you because they're so guarded and so, protective of what is ailing them in the game right now because they think that the other team may listen and find out. I laugh at that all the time because the public information that's out there and even their advanced reports, they know it already. They absolutely know it already. So, it's harder. It really is. Guys don't let you in as much as they used to. So that part is getting a little more challenging. And, so there are times that I'll leave a broadcast and I'll go home and be like, Twins won the game. That's fine. But I don't think I did my job very well tonight because I didn't really. Did I educate people? Probably on some numbers, but is that what people want to hear, or do they want to hear more stories? And I'd love to share more stories, but it's just getting harder and harder for guys to open up to you and to show their that they are people and stuff that they're working on. Certain guys are going to be more open to that than others, and over time, the more equity you have within the team and the market, you're going to be probably in a better spot. But yeah, a lot of the good stuff that that we'd love to share, either we can't because they don't want you to, or we just don't have access to anymore.
So a follow-up on that a little bit. How much of that do you think is like more recently because of the boom of like social media and always having like people on the need for immediate information, and then the second something gets out, it just blows up in like people's faces, like the players and stuff? Do you think that that's kind of been a big reason why they're more guarded now than before?
I think players have their own ways of getting their story out now.
Mm-hmm.
They don't need us to tell their story anymore. They have their phones, they have their Instagram accounts, they have their own podcasts, right? They have ways of telling their own stories in a way that they want to drive it and the way they want to steer it and how much they want to reveal, that they don't need me or others to kind of share that anecdote anymore. So I think that is more of the issue than, cell phone cameras, and they're going to, that's been around for too long. But I think the rise in just ways for players to tell their own success, failures, story, background, I think is much more prevalent now than it was, heck, even 5 years ago.
That makes sense.
Sorry,
go ahead, Tyler.
Yeah, so moving on to Twins baseball, which I am the resident fan of on this podcast. We are approaching the trade deadline. The Twins are, I believe, a game and a half out of the wild card spot as we sit today. What would you think would be a bigger surprise to you? That the Twins were to trade away 4 players off their 40-man roster, or for them to acquire 2 players to add to the 40-man roster?
Well, it all depends who we're talking about. Like, I think if you connect what the Twins did last year, not all of them. I mean, I didn't see that coming, trading 40% of the roster, in a span of 4 or 5 days leading up to the deadline. But many of those trades involve players who were on expiring contracts. I mean, outside of Joan Duran and Louis Varland, unless I'm missing a guy here and there, the bulk of those guys, if not all, were going to be free agents at the end of the year, including Willie Castro and Harrison Bader and those guys, Chris Paddock. Those guys were all going to be, gone. I mean, Griffin Jackson, I guess, was under team control still for a little bit as well. So to me, if we're talking about what this trade deadline may or may not look like, that's what I go to first, is that, Ryan Jeffers is a free agent. He's going to come back probably in the next few weeks, hopefully in the next 3 or 4 weeks from his broken hamate bone. I mean, that's certainly a name that's on my radar. We keep hearing about Joe Ryan too. He's under team control for another year. But I go with the people that I work with and lean on who have a good feel for this kind of thing. I'm sure the Twins are going to get calls about Joe Ryan. I'm sure they're going to get calls about a lot of guys. I think even a guy like Anthony Honda, who's been throwing the ball better. If you look at his overall numbers, they're not great, but he had a terrible April, terrible weather. But the last 6-7 weeks, he's thrown really well. He's throwing in the upper 90s. So that's that's a guy to me that everybody's always looking for hard throwing left-handed relievers. So I think there's going to be pieces on this Twins team that are going to be appealing. And sure, depending on where they're at, I would imagine they'll listen to every single call. They should. They shouldn't say no to anything. I mean, the Twins have issues, and some of the issues have not been corrected. And in terms of getting more athletic and having better defense, especially with the infield, that's been a problem now for a long time. And they try to move some pieces around. It's been a revolving door at first base. So the Royce Lewis has looked better since he moved over to first base. He made a good play in the game against Arizona on Friday night. So, yeah, they have no doubt, some compelling pieces and some, I think, guys that other teams are going to be calling about. Whether or not they pull the trigger, we got time. We have a ton of time before that's all said and done. And even, to me, what set the Twins up for what happened at the trade deadline last year was that first series out of the All-Star break. They were a game under 500, I believe. Yeah, they were a game under 500 at the All-Star break last year. And they opened a series in Colorado and then the Dodgers. They lost 2 out of 3. The Rockies were by far the worst team. The Rockies hadn't won a home series all year. And then they won 2 out of 3 against the Twins. Then the Twins went to Dodger Stadium, were a pitch away from winning 2 out of 3 against the Dodgers. Instead, they got walked off in heartbreaking fashion, came home, laid an egg against Washington, and that was it. So that, to me, was, I think, going into the All-Star break, they were like, let's see where we're at here a little bit. But then those 6-7 games out of the break, that pretty much sent the Twins into kind of that tailspin, and eventually, to me, in my opinion, led to all the moves that they made at the deadline last year.
Yeah, I think for me, we do know that there are going to be those players on those expiring contracts. So Josh Bell and Ryan Jeffers, maybe moving some relievers around, like that's going to be, probably likely to occur. I think that the fans on the team are just going to be a little bit more curious, what happens to some of the other veteran players, if there's any appetite there. One of my goals going into the season, and one that I don't think you can really check a box on yet, is I just kind of wanted to know what we had and who we knew was and was not going to be a part of the Twins' future for the next 2 or 3 years. So, when we look at Royce Lewis and Brooks Lee, Matt Wallner, Lou Keishel, I just wanted to get like sort of a clear understanding of their trajectory, as well as their place within the Twins organization. And I think that that's still an incomplete grade. And that's one where I'm really not sure where the Twins are with all of sort of that mid-20s talent that they have on the roster. Obviously, Keishel is going to stay around because he's still young, but it's more like the Lewis and the Wallners and the Brooks Lees to say whether they are or not part of those future plans. So what do you think that a fan should look for when they're trying to understand trajectory of a player as much as anything?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think the Twins, this has been an issue now for a long time, that there's plenty of homegrown, high drafted talent on this roster. I mean, all the guys you mentioned are first or second round picks that they've made this great ascension through the minor leagues with domination, great numbers, checked every single box. But then when they get to the big leagues, it either plateaus or it just stays too even. Like you're hoping for that more of that linear rise, right? As you kind of work your way into the big leagues. And Keishal's still 23 years old, but he's got a lot to clean up, certainly with his defense right now. And I think that's the biggest question is I think his bat's coming around. He's he hustles, he's strong, he's smart. But where does he fit in defensively? That, to me, is, I think, a big question mark for him. And he's not alone. I mean, they just moved Royce Lewis to first base and second base here, last month. So I think they're trying to figure everything out in that regard. But why? I think the bigger question, and I think it's a simple question with a difficult answer, and I'm sure other organizations, and maybe you guys have a sense of this with your own teams, is that why has this happened so often where homegrown first and second round picks, for the most part, there have been exceptions, but why are they not getting any better? Like what's been missing there? Like putting up huge numbers in the minor leagues, which is great. And I think there's never been a bigger gap between AAA and the big leagues right now. I just think it's just so massive what you're seeing. So when I see rookies come up and I look at their AAA numbers, I'm like, okay. I look at their AA numbers. Okay, they all look the same. They all do. But then when they get to the big leagues, it's just different because the pitching they're seeing is so much better. And, the hanging breaking balls that they're crushing day in and day out in the minor leagues, they're getting maybe one a game, maybe one a game. And the spin is nasty. The velocity's gross. I think it's really hard. But I think, I think the Twins, they're trying to get to that answer. Like what has been the problem for the last 5 or 10 years that so many, and this goes back to Alex Kirilloff too, was a first round pick, a guy that I think the Twins were looking at as their first baseman for 10 years, but he had to retire because of injury. But still, where was the improvement and why is that not happening? Now you can see spots of it. You'll see stretches of it. I think Brooks Lee has improved this season. I think we're seeing more pop. I think he's much better at third base than he was at short. But why has that been happening guy after guy? And I think that's been the biggest question outside of keeping guys healthy, which nobody knows the answer to. But if the Twins internally could take a look at, okay, we have all this talent that we drafted, we developed, and now here they are at the big leagues. And why are they not taking that next step? And the game is hard, but I think that to me is the biggest question as to why the Twins have just not been able to get better and stay on this good consistent path is because they need to, with the market that they have and the payroll that they have, they're going to need their first and second round picks to hit. And I mean literally, but also figuratively here, that they have got to be leaders and perennial all-stars, because that's going to be your war, right? Those are going to be the guys that should be your best players. And if you're not getting that, it's tough. That's what Cleveland has done. That's what Milwaukee has done. Tampa Bay has done. They've just drafted and developed so well that other small to mid-market teams are trying to copy that model, and that's been easier said than done.
It sounds exactly like what the Tigers have been dealing with.
Yeah, I mean, the Tigers, Kevin McGonigal looks like a star. He looks like he's going to be a problem in this division for the next decade. He looks awesome and love everything about his game. First time I saw him this year, Twins Tigers series at Target Field back in April. Eric Orzi's pitching, throws a splitter 60% of the time, and McGonigal moves up in the batter's box. Left-handed batter, he moves up. He's not going to let that splitter bite. He's going to attack it while it's still elevated. What a smart decision. And then he ripped the ball down the right field line, I think, for a double. So he's a great player. I mean, he is an absolute star, and I've enjoyed watching him play this year.
It's gonna be fun to watch. So let's lift the curtain, go behind the scenes a little bit, if that's okay. One thing I've always wanted to know, and it's fitting now that you're on the road. So walk us through a typical day for you on the road when you've got a night game. What are you doing during the day prepping for the game, or are you going out and seeing the sights? Are you much of a sightseer? Do you take in the local fare?
So I do. So I exercise every day. I'm not a late sleeper. Normally I get up between 6 and 7. I check in with my family. My kids are 13 and 10. So I check in with my wife and my kids in the morning, and I try to see them off before school, at least. I'll FaceTime with them in the morning while they're having breakfast and getting ready to go. So my day starts with them. And then, I'm always reading. I'm always reading, from the night before, anything I missed in the clubhouse post game. And then I take a break, and then I go exercise. And I listen to Pearl Jam and just kind of get in my zone there and get lost with my favorite band. And then I'll get back to the room, and then I listen to a lot of podcasts about the teams that the Twins are playing to get some inside information about just the feel, I think, for the fan base. And I do that a lot. And then I start my score sheet. I have a big 11x17 scorecard that I still write down every single day. My pitching information takes me about an hour, just all the starter stuff that I like to put on the right side of my sheet every day. And then I just am filling in my scorecard. I'm just, I'll pull in some numbers. I don't have the lineups yet, but there's certain trends that I want to follow, how teams did the night before with runners scoring position, strikeouts, walks, have you. But the first game of the series, that one takes me more time because that's when I write down more team-related stats, first pitch, swing percentage, chase, contact, strikeout rate, walk rate, run scoring, DRS, outs above average. I want to get a feel for how the team is playing and what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses. I'm a big proponent of one-run games. I think that's a big stat when you get to September. And to me, that those, for the most part, are going to be your contending teams. The one-run game stat, to me, I love that. So then they're good in one-run games. Why? And often the answer is good defense, good bullpen. Not always, but that generally takes me down that path. And every now and then I might be surprised. But that generally is kind of what I do. And then I really just try to find – we were talking earlier about stories, and I try to find a story or two about a guy each game. I'm not doing a deep dive. It's a Twin show. It's not a national. When I do a national broadcast, different story. But when I'm doing a regional show, and it's for the Twins, but if there's a fun story about playing Arizona, like with Corbin Carroll, something from his childhood that I think is interesting to tell, I want to find that. Or an injury that a pitcher suffered, and, with it came a lack of success in the minor leagues, and the guy thought about, mailing it in and just saying, hey, I'll do something else, and then found a new pitch. So I'll try to find that. I try to find a tidbit or two about a guy or two for every game. And so that's what I'll do here this afternoon, and then hop on the bus. And then, I'm doing radio as we record this conversation now. I'm doing radio for this trip. I hadn't done a true Twins regular season radio game since 2023. So I get FaceTime with the manager every day. And so that's kind of my day. But it's a lot of reading. It's a lot of listening. And I'm always a series ahead, too. So we play the Dodgers this next homestand starting on Monday. So I'll be back on TV for that. So I'm always into the series that we're playing, the opponent that we're playing, but I'm also looking a series ahead.
I was going to say, Nels, you can probably help him scout out the Dodgers, right?
Yeah, I'm a Giants fan. They're good. FYI.
Yeah, they seem to be okay. They got some good players.
And you're missing Ohtani's paternity leave too. I think he'll be back by the time that they come into town. So
he might pitch on Wednesday. This was before that paternity announcement. We were thinking that he was going to pitch on Wednesday. I don't know if that changes things now, but my son wanted to go to a game, and I said I think Ohtani's pitching Wednesday. But then the paternity list happened, so he's going to be disappointed if that doesn't happen. But dude, not my fault.
Yeah. We had the opportunity to talk to Mace Michaels, the Twins meteorologist, several weeks ago. made me curious. Obviously, during weather delay, he has his hands full, but what do broadcasters do when there's a weather delay and you have an hour or two on your hands that you didn't know you would have?
So that's when I'll do some research too. Is that like something will pop up in the clubhouse, or talking with a visiting broadcaster, a name or a story. I'm like, ooh, I didn't know that. And so oftentimes, state of mind, we'll dive into something and look something up, or if I have I have a national game coming up. I'm doing the Twins Yankees game on Peacock on Sunday, July 5th. So I've started my work on the Yankees already, just because it's a national show and I got to do more than just, a Twins-centered broadcast. So I've started my prep for that. I'm just trying to dive into Baseball Savant and Reference and Fangraphs, really get into, the Yankees a little bit more than I would otherwise. But on radio, when we'd have rain delay, we didn't keep it very much in the booth, but we would have an interview every now and then, and we'd have a long form interview with, if Cleveland was there, we talked with Tom Hamilton, or the Red Sox, we talked with Joe Castiglione, Rick Rizzi. We try to find a good story or a good, interview, and we would do that for about 20, 25 minutes. But TV right now, we don't do much. I love this Twins TV partnership with Major League Baseball. Is that what I think is really cool right now is that we can throw it to one of our minor league games. And the Twins have some really good, promising talent right now, even with the St. Paul Saints. And so if we're rained out and fans can see a Walker Jenkins at bat, or a Gabby Gonzalez at bat, or a Kalen Culpepper at bat, that to me is fun. You go down to Cedar Rapids, if Eduardo Taillid is catching, he was one of the young players the Twins got from the Phillies for Joan Duran. If Dason Hill is pitching, one of their better pitching prospects, I mean, that to me, I think is pretty fun, that we can share, some of these players with our audience, throughout Twins territory, if we're rained out. So to me, that has been, I think, the most appealing part of this partnership, is the ability now to share not just Twins baseball with our fans, but also some minor league players when we have those rain delays.
So Cory, I love my Fangraphs and baseball reference. So when you're starting your research and trying to dig in leading up to a team, it's been covered while I was away. But I guess I'd be curious, how far of a range are you looking at, and what is the one stat where you kind of start your investigation on? Is there any one place where you start?
I always start with Baseball Savant, and I start with pitchers, and I start with strikeout rate, walk rate, and then I want to know if this guy's a ground ball guy or a fly ball guy. And that's where I start. And then a stat that I use a lot on the air this year is I'm a big believer in bullpens and strikeout rate and ground ball rate, because I think that to me will save a team. If you have a bullpen that can miss bats or get ground balls and get inning double plays, you are going to be in a great spot. And Cleveland in 2024, I think, had historically, if you look at Fangraphs, you look at bullpen WAR, I think that was the best bullpen in baseball history. In terms of what that bullpen did was historically good. Mm-hmm. So I start with Baseball Savant, and then when I get to Pitch Mix, what do they throw? How often have the percentages changed? Because I like that. On Savant, you can look at previous seasons and you look at, okay, he's throwing a sinker more this year. He's backed off his four seam. And then I break it down into tendencies against righties and lefties. What are they throwing? What's the strikeout pitch? What pitch does he generate the biggest whiff on? So I write all that stuff down. And then I'll dive into, you can scroll down on a pitcher's page, you get to arm slot. And it led to a good conversation because we just saw the Diamondbacks on Friday night, and Michael Soroka got hurt after an inning, but his arm slot is like 10 degrees lower than it has been. And so I saw that. I'm like, okay, now there's a question. Now let me get to the why. That to me is a story. So talking earlier about find something and now find an answer. I'm like, okay, so now I got the answer. He's had this history of shoulder problems and trying to get more movement with his slurve. And so he throws it. Joe Ryan throws from 24 degrees. Michael Soroka's at 27. So it's way down there. And then you take that information, and I asked one of our hitting coaches about how do we prep for that, because you don't see that too often, and you get that they take a jugs machine and they have it on the ground and with an upshoot as part of their pregame work. So that to me is a fun story to share. Okay, how do they attack this lower arm slot? And because every team has these traject, machines, but they have them in their home. They don't travel them. Maybe the Dodgers do, maybe the Red Sox do, but most teams do not travel them. So there may be some semblance of, an AI, VR or whatever, pitch machine you can bring with you, but not too many do anymore. And so that to me is, okay, how can I tell that story? I see a number. Now, how can I make that into a story? And that's what kind of led me down that path. So after I'm done with Savant, then I go to reference. I like, on the splits pages, runners in scoring position. Are they susceptible to a first pitch home run? Are they good with 0-2, 2 strikes, 2 outs? Is the first inning a problem? You see that a lot. That, Taj Bradley, for example, first inning is a problem. With a lot of guys that we just saw in Texas, first inning is a problem. So that to me is something that I like to share as well. So that they're back and forth. And then in terms of Fangraphs, David Laurila writes one of my favorite. He writes a Sunday notebook on Fangraphs every Sunday, and I love that. And he's based in Boston, so I just love reading his stuff. And he'll put in fun little nuggets and stories about players that not just happen to be in Boston for that series, but just things he's heard and found and read. And to me, that's a really good piece of information that I like to lean on when prepping for my game.
Do you have a favorite? And we'll exclude Target Field in Minneapolis to save you the hate mail. A favorite ballpark and city that you get to go to?
Seattle. I love Seattle. I love Seattle, and the Twins go there at the end of July, which is perfect weather. Perfect weather. That time of year, it is blue sky, sunshine, 70s. It is perfect. I love Seattle. I love the ballpark. I like the city. I'm into Vinyl Records, and there's my favorite record store is about 15, 20 minutes west of downtown called Easy Street Records. And the owner of that store, his name is Matt Vaughn, and he's I love Pearl Jam and grunge music. That's my jam. And he was there from the start of it. And his store is pretty much the Tower Records of Seattle, and the history, and it's an amazing place. They have records, they have merch, but they also have a diner next to it. So I spend 3 hours there talking with Matt. He wants baseball stories. I want music stories. And so that is my favorite stop on the tour. So I love going to Seattle. I just think the ballpark's fun. The fans are great when they're good, especially. But even going there, and they were good, but going there when King Felix was pitching and seeing that group down the left field line with the big old drumstick that they're about to eat and all the King's Court. I have so many good memories of going to Seattle. Not that the Twins win there very much, but just the atmosphere is among the best in the game.
When you go to that record shop, is there anything on particular that you're going to be on the hunt for? Do you have
there's always a live show. I got the one that I was looking for last year. I was looking for the Pearl Jam show from Soldier Field in '95, and there was a live version of that, so I did get that. So that was on the hunt for that. There's a band called Live from Pennsylvania, from York, Pennsylvania. They did an MTV Unplugged show, which I have not been able to find the vinyl version of that, and I don't know if it even exists. But that's one that I was looking for. There was a Pearl Jam show in '94, Fox Theater, Atlanta. It's there, but they take out all the swear words. And I'm like, I don't want to. I get there's some charm to that. I get it, but I want to hear Ed when he's passionate and whatever he's saying. So that one I was intrigued by, but then when I read the reviews on it, that's what you do. You buy a record, you just can't play it and then okay, I'll take it. It's buyer beware. So you got to look up some of these bootleg copies. They're going to have some scratches on it, fine, but you got to know what you're buying. But yeah, that's normally what I get. And then I always end up with something else. Mudhoney, I met some of the band members that have been there when I've been lucky enough to be at the store, and I'll buy an album and they'll sign it for me. That's the kind of scene it is. It's just, you never know who's going to be in there. And in that part of Seattle, there's nothing, everything is locally owned. Starbucks came and offered Matt millions of dollars 20 years ago, and he turned it down. He said, no, I'm not. This is going to be my store. This is not going to be a Starbucks here in West Seattle. And I think the neighborhood and the community never forgot that, and they never will forget that. So that is an ultimate hangout destination, and that's a place that I'm not big into shopping. We go to New York, Chicago, LA, whatever. I don't there. I shop. That is my one big shopping spree every year when I go to Easy Street.
Well, it doesn't sound like it's a shop. It sounds like it's more of a hunt. Which I think
It's
is a totally
an
different
experience.
thing.
It really is.
Yeah.
To me, it's this amazing experience. And from Nirvana and Soundgarden and Alice in Chains. I mean, it's just, he's got stories about everybody, and there's merch in there. There's books. It's just a great place. I like the food too. And he built a bar upstairs now. And so we have a Saturday day game. So my brother and some friends are going to come out. And I told him, like, hey, if you're looking for a fancy night out, we're not going to do it. We're going to Easy Street Saturday night. And so we're going to go hang there, have some drinks and, listen to some music. And then we'll see where the night takes us. I have no idea where it's going to go. And that, to me, is the best part.
That sounds awesome. I love Seattle as well. So this is kind of an odd question, but you brought up Pearl Jam quite a bit. And as much as we all love Pearl Jam, I'm curious, do you have the ability, or will you attempt to do an Eddie Vedder impression?
No, I don't have that. No, gosh, no. I've been lucky enough to meet him a couple times, and he's awesome. One of my favorite pictures I have in my house. He's a Cub fan, and he loved Ron Santo. His favorite Cub though was Jose Cardinal. That was his guy. But he'll show up at Wrigley, and he sang the stretch one day, and they sing the stretch obviously bottom 7, but they do the interview in the Cub radio booth bottom 6.
Mm-hmm.
And so he came in and was chatting with Pat and Ron, and I'm sitting in the back, and I'm like, my face is all red. I don't know what to say. But I got this great picture of it's me. He's got his arm around me, and then Pat Hughes, Ron Santo on a beautiful summer afternoon at Wrigley Field, green grass, ivy in the background. Is one of my favorite pictures I have.
Can't beat that experience.
All right, a couple more questions here for you, and then we'll let you get on with your day. Your kids did a fun interview last week with some Twins players and coaches and stuff. Are they looking to follow in Dad's footsteps, get into the broadcasting game?
So I have nothing to do with that. I mean, there's no nepotism here, okay? Seriously, I have nothing to do with this. They did this last year too, and it was all through Target. And I think somebody that knows my wife, and seriously, I had nothing to do with this last year. I had nothing to do with it this year, and they were asked back by Target to do it again. Bullseye's banter. It's a good question, and part of me hopes not, because you miss a lot. My son's birthday is in June, my wife's birthday is in April. I'm not with them very much. And my son is 13 years old. And as we're chatting right now, he's playing in a baseball tournament in St. Cloud, Minnesota. And I can't be there. And I just miss so many of his activities. And my daughter's on a dance team. And I miss a lot of her tournaments and competitions. That it takes a toll, man. The divorce rate is what it is in our country. I would imagine if you work in this business, it's even higher, because it is really tough. It is very demanding for 7 months, and it's tough. And for players, they have a finish line, whereas they hopefully they're in the game for a long time. But then when they're in their mid to late 30s, early 40s, they're home, right? That part of their life is over, and they get to enjoy that experience. If you're lucky enough to do this, and this is my 15th year, with the Twins, but my 20th year overall, covering Major League Baseball, which is hard to believe. You're lucky enough, you want to do this for 40 years, you're going to miss everything. You're going to miss everything with your kids. And I hear it all the time, and I'm very fortunate. People say you have my dream job, and I do. This is all I wanted to do my whole life, and I have no regrets. But it does take a toll on just the kind of husband that I am and want to be, and the kind of father that I am and want to be, the kind of friend and son for my parents. I mean, there's just I miss events, I miss activities all the time, but it has provided and continues to provide a wonderful life for my family, and that's why I can go to bed at night and be at peace and be grateful and happy, because it's providing a wonderful life for my wife and my kids, and they're able to do all these fun activities and live out their dreams. And so that to me is the silver lining in all this. But yeah, if you're asking me what I would cheer for them, whatever they choose. But am I inside? Am I saying, hey, do I want them to do this? Probably not. No.
Yeah.
And it's also, I won the lottery. You know, when I get a chance to speak at schools, and they have a hard time believing this, but the numbers are factual. You have a better chance swinging a bat in a major league game or throwing a pitch in a major league game than you do calling a major league game, because the numbers are what they are. There have been, 25,000 baseball players, I think it is. There haven't been that many broadcasters. If you really think about the game and its history, there's 30 teams. There haven't been that many, because hopefully you keep this job for a long time. There's turnover in baseball. These jobs, hopefully they don't turn over as often. And so with that, I won the lottery. So the chances that it's going to happen again are not very high.
Yeah, think of how many players have come through the organization since it's been Herb Carneal, John Gordon, yourself, Chris Atterbury. It's been there's probably been 1,000 players that have donned a Twins uniform in the time that those four individuals have been on the radio.
Yeah, I mean, if you get a chance, I'm not sure you guys have been to Target Field, but when you get off on the Herb Carneal press box level, get off the elevator, you look to your left, there's on the board is all the people that have broadcasted Twins baseball. And there's some great names, Hall of Famers up there. But then many of them did it for just like 2 or 3 years. But those that have done it for a decade plus, few and far between. And, that's probably, you can say that about fewer than 10 have really done this with that kind of longevity.
Right now, it seems like the Twins broadcast has sort of had you on it, and then a roving band of color commentators, which is sort of different from having just, a Dan Gladden or a Justin Morneau that is sort of attached at your hip. What did you like about having the same person every day, and what do you like about having different voices every couple of weeks?
Well, I think the economics of baseball have changed so drastically that with the guys that I work with on TV, they made substantial money. They made substantial money where they don't need this job, because they made a fortune in their careers. I mean, Justin Morneau, Denard Span, Trevor Plouffe, and Glenn Perkins. These guys had great, long all-star careers. I mean, really good players. So there's that side of it, that they have the freedom because they have young families. I mean, Trevor Plouffe has 2 young kids. Glenn Perkins, he's got 1 kid in college, 1 about to graduate or just graduated high school. But he's of the mindset that, I think he's more open-minded to doing more because his kids are older. Justin Morneau has 5 young kids. I mean, so he wants to be home. So I think that is part of the reason why that I don't think these guys have to do it in a way that predecessors, and if you go back 20, 30 years that the former players were doing it, they just did not make the same money that, players of this generation, made. So that was a part of it. There's a novelty to it that I really like, that, when we're talking about Royce Lewis and his new stance, hearing Justin Morneau break down exactly what he's doing, I think is great television. When Griffin Jacks was succeeding and or struggling as a late inning bullpen arm, having Glenn Perkins, 3-time All-Star closer, break down what he's doing right is awesome. When you're talking about Byron Buxton chasing down a ball in right center, left center, coming in, route running, Denard Span, taking us through every step of that. I can't do that. Brooks Lee moving over to third base, even, when Miguel Sano was the third baseman, Trevor Plouffe was his teammate, hearing him talk about the challenges of playing third base and where to bring your glove and where your feet need to be and getting that right, throw across on a bounce. That's great information. I mean, that's the part of the job that I can or should ever explain, that's what these guys are doing. And then with Danny, you get everything. You get the information, you get the education, but you get the stories. And the Twins, 87 and 91, we hold on to that in Twins territory better than anything else. 87 and 91, that still resonates with everybody in town. And he was part of the group of 7 that was on both teams. Not many were on that team both in 87 and 91. And he's just been, a leader, in this community and for the fan base and for this team for a long, long time, going back to when he was traded, at the beginning of the 87 season. So, yeah, that's what I like, is that you get different perspectives. And I think, to me, it does freshen up the job, here and there. But hearing, I'm going to be with Glenn Perkins here for the Dodgers series, but I hope Ohtani does pitch. So hearing Glenn Perkins talk about Ohtani as a pitcher, I think is going to be fascinating, and just breaking down what makes the Dodgers so good. Having a mind like that, I think will make for good TV.
So what I heard is Dan Gladden is poor and doesn't care for his family.
No, he's got grown kids, man. He's got grandkids, but now he's not traveling too much anymore because he loves being a grandfather. It's great seeing his grandkids around. No, but Danny's been so successful with his life, and for a guy that went undrafted, what a story. I mean, just everything that he has earned and everything that's come his way, he earned. I mean, he was banging down doors for an opportunity. Always thought he was better than the guy that was out there, and that motivated him, man. And the best compliment that Danny, that I would hear this all the time from a fan coming up to Danny, wasn't so much about 87 and 91. It was, I love the way you played. I love the way you played. And every time I heard that, it resonated with me. And it's still, I will never forget that, because I like hearing that, because it just kind of acknowledges what we all think of Danny, is that he is somebody that earned all of this with hard work, determination, love for his family, love for the sport, love for the Twins. And he's a vital part of the fabric that is Twins territory.
Well, Cory, we are closing in on an hour. How about we end this with a little rapid fire? Is that okay?
Sure.
All right. Well, usually the first thing I ask is favorite band. We've already covered that, so let's change that up a bit. What's your most hated band?
I'm not really into the EDM stuff. I just
Okay.
it's not my thing. I don't know their names. I know my brother, who is 50 years old, he loves that kind of music right now, and it's driving me nuts. It's causing tension within my own family. Because my brother he's my teammate for all Pearl Jam shows. And now he's diving into this EDM crap, and I just can't get behind it. If that's me yelling at clouds, so be it.
We all have that, right?
Yeah.
Have you attempted the 999 challenge?
I don't even know what that is.
9 beers, 9 hot dogs, and 9 innings.
Oh no, I don't drink alcohol anymore. I gave up alcohol when I moved to TV. So I haven't had any alcohol for about 2.5 years. That one would be tough, just because of the gig. And if I tell my wife on an off day, hey, I'm going to a ballpark to eat hot dogs and watch 9 innings of baseball, talked about the divorce rate earlier, then it's 100% going to happen if I go to a ball game on my off day.
Fair enough.
Maybe you could do a 777 challenge at one of the 13 games.
There you go. That might be something. Yeah.
Perfect hot dog toppings.
Well, again, this is going to sound bad. I don't eat red meat or pork, so I have not had a hot dog in a long time. I'm a chicken sausage guy. I love chicken sausages. To me, it's good. Can I say what I like? I like jardiniere.
Yeah, absolutely.
I like jardiniere. I like spice. So jardiniere and some hot mustard is my go-to on a chicken sausage.
Yeah, I love jardiniere. So good. Any rapid fire questions from you guys?
Nothing.
I guess a request.
Yeah.
When you bump into Danny Gladden and he's on the Dodgers call, I would love to hear more stories coming out of his time in Japan.
Those are great.
Yeah, I feel like those get touched upon, but I'd really like to hear even more.
So there'll be obviously quite a bit of Japanese media at Target Field with this upcoming series, and he's very popular. I mean, Japanese writers, they will approach him and they want to hear about the famous fight that he had in Japan. that was playing in the clubhouse when we played the Rays years ago down at Tropicana Field. It was, for some reason, it was playing endlessly on a loop on the TVs in the clubhouse. So, sure enough, Danny takes the mask and, the uppercut and hurt his finger. But yeah, he enjoyed going to Japan and playing there. That was obviously during the strike and everything that was going on in the States. But he had fond memories, and I know he enjoyed playing there. But he's still very, very popular, and I'm sure that when some Japanese media, see him this upcoming series, they will certainly want to catch up.
Maybe he'll drop your name on the broadcast, Tyler.
No, I don't need that.
Fair enough. Well, Cory, we can't thank you enough for the time that you've given us today. Really, really interesting interview. You got obviously a wealth of knowledge and experience in this, and we just love soaking up this information from guys like you. So we can't thank you enough. Guys,
I enjoyed it, and best of luck with your show, and thanks for having me on.
Appreciate it. Have a good one, and go Twins, right?
You got it. Thank you.
Go Twins.
Thank you.